Welcome to the first of three classes on the book Lessons in Truth by Dr. H. Emily Cady. The subsequent classes will be in July and August on the third Wednesday of those months. Dr. Cady was an amazing person. She was born just before 1850 and lived to be 92 years old. She taught school in her early 20s and she did so in a one room schoolhouse before training to be a homeopathic doctor, one of the first women doctors in America. She was a brilliant scholar and trained under Emma Curtis Hopkins, one of the iconic leaders and teachers of New Thought. She also studied the teachings at depth of Ralph Waldo Emerson. Dr. Cady came to the attention of Myrtle Fillmore when she and her husband Charles were starting up the Unity movement more than a century and a quarter ago. They asked her to write an article for the new Unity magazine, and it became a series which was then incorporated to become the first book published by Unity. And it also happens to be the most widely published and sold book within the Unity movement. And it contains the principles, it lays out the principles of the Unity movement. Now, there are 12 chapters in the book. We'll probably only get through the first couple of chapters today during this 30-minute session, but we'll plan to cover all of the other 12 chapters in the subsequent classes. Be aware that I'll be going back and forth between my notes and quoting the book itself, because she lays out so clearly in just very clear language how the principles work. But be aware, as was typical at that time, she uses the male gender. She'll say he or him when it refers to every person. So we'll rely on you, where that is so, to convert that to a gender neutral status. I'll be going back and forth between my notes and the book. So let's get started. Dr. Cady encourages us to enter into this course of instruction by reserving our judgment and just letting the ideas lie passively in your mind until the course is completed. Be willing, as she says, to become as little children, open to learning. What is truth? She describes truth as representing the perfect ideas of good which God has created. Truth is absolute, unlimited, perfect, unchanging, and complete. We understand that truth is universal. And in Unity, we refer to truth in terms of two concepts. First, absolute truth, which describes the pure, ideal good and encompasses divine mind. For example, an example of absolute truth is there is one presence and one power in the universe and in my life, God. Now, we could also talk about what we call relative truth, which might be, well, you can always rely on that particular person to tell the truth. Well, that's relative truth. It's related to our situation here in this lifetime, in the worldly situation around us. It's important to gain an understanding of the relationship between absolute and relative truth. The relative world, being a product of thought, is not ultimate or eternal in nature, since that which is relative is not permanent or unchangeable. We come to understand that any condition existing on the relative plane, on this worldly plane, has the potential to be healed and changed, to be transformed. Dr. Katie begins her book with a rather strong statement. Every man, meaning every person, believes himself or herself to be in bondage to the flesh and to things of the flesh. All suffering is the result of this belief. Am I free of fear? Have I given up all doubting? Is worry something I do not experience? Or is my physical well-being dependent on a doctor's prognosis? Do I need certain medication or vitamins or food supplements? Am I uncomfortable if my body does not appear a certain way? How about my clothes, my hair, facial makeup? Does it matter if I forget to apply deodorant or cologne? Do I overly concern myself with which foods enter my body? She relates the history of the coming of the people of Israel out of their long bondage in Egypt to the human mind or consciousness of each person growing up out of our animal or sense awareness and into the spiritual. She's quoting the Bible here and adapting it to this comparison. I have come down, this is God speaking, I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of Egypt and to bring them up into a land flowing with milk and honey. In other words, the promised land. And adapting that, I have seen that you are in a state of darkness, meaning a state of separation from God, and are suffering. And I hear your cries for help. I will deliver you out of a state of lack and limitation and will bring you into a good experience, flowing with abundance in all areas of your lives that have importance to you. Dr. Katie states that sometime, somewhere, every human being must come to himself or herself. Having tired of eating the husks, I will arise and go to my Father. Here she's equating it with the prodigal son. Humans grow up through various stages, from selfish animal to spiritual understanding, where he is free from all suffering because he or she has conscious dominion over all things. Dr. Katie states that somewhere on this journey, the human consciousness or intellect comes to a place where it gladly bows to its spiritual self and confesses that this spiritual self is highest and is Lord. It is not a process of acquiescence, but rather of joyful freedom. And by virtue of your listening here, and she states as reading in this book, you are already at that place of readiness. So there's no turning back. Now, it doesn't mean that you will never again have doubts or fears. It means that in your heart of hearts, you know that a spiritual solution is present there for you whenever you choose to turn to it. Each person must, sooner or later, learn to stand alone with his God. There is in your indwelling Lord all the life and health, all the strength and peace and joy, all the wisdom and support. In the past, we have believed that each of these came from persons or conditions or situations outside of ourselves, outer circumstances and surroundings. Nothing anyone does or says or fails to do or say can take away our joy and good. Our freedom comes from understanding our relationship to life, meaning our relationship to God, and living our lives in accordance with this relationship. What is our relationship to life? Are we slave to circumstances? What is our relationship to God? Is it primary for us? We are God's children. And if children, then heirs. Heirs to all wisdom, all love, all strength, all life, all power, all good. Meaning that all the good that God is and has is in reality for us, if we only know how to claim our inheritance. And this is what these lessons are about. Though a child, Paul said, we are no different than a bondservant. But with the fullness of time, as we develop ourselves spiritually, we become sons and daughters of God and are ready to be full heirs of the kingdom. What has brought about this fullness of time for you? What makes you now ready to leave behind a state of bondage and begin to claim your inheritance? You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, is stated in John 15. Dr. Katie states that it is through the indwelling Christ that we are to receive all that God has and is, as much or as little as we can or dare to claim. Our search for truth must no longer be for rewards. It must be for living our life, seeking to be the truth consciously, to be love, to be wisdom, to be life, and to let the results take care of themselves. Now, what do we need in order to bring this about? Well, we have a need for quiet meditation, to make the time to get all your thoughts centered on God and on your relationship with the Creator. Let the annoying cares and anxieties go for a while. Some persons go and get caught up in this. They give their entire attention to meditation. And this is not what Jesus did. He was always open to new inspiration, to increased courage and power for activity and for overcoming. We need to seek always to have more and more of the Christ spirit of meekness and love incorporated into our daily lives. Meekness and love and willingness does not mean being servile. It means being pliable, open, acceptance, welcoming to the learnings of life. We need forgiveness. We need to practice forgiveness. And that's not indifference toward those who do personal injury to us. Rather, it is to forgive, meaning to give for, meaning to give some good in return for the evil that we have been given. You need to not be under bondage to false beliefs about your circumstances or environment. No matter how evil circumstances may appear, or how much it may appear that some other personality is at the foundation of your sorrow or trouble, God, or good alone, is really there when you call forth God's law into expression. If we have the courage to persist in seeing God in it all, it shall be turned to our advantage. Joseph in Genesis 50 said, "As for you, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." Dr. Katie states that the very circumstances in your life that seem heartbreaking evils will turn to joy before your very eyes if you will steadfastly refuse to see anything but God in them. We must understand that every solution is from within. It's natural for the human mind to seek escape from troubles by running from present environments or planning some change on the material level, but no permanent or real outward way of escape from miseries or circumstances will work. All help must come from within. The real inner consciousness that the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Dr. Katie states that the ultimate aim of each person should be to come into the consciousness of an indwelling Christ. And then all external matters will be resolved. There should be a calm, restful, unwavering trust in God as able to accomplish the thing desired. Victory must be won in the silence of your own being first. And then you need take no part in the outer demonstration of your relief. Of your relief from conditions. Dr. Katie states, you're holding to the words, Christ is the way. When you are perplexed and confused and can see no way of escape, will invariably open a way of complete deliverance. In her book, Dr. Katie says, "For it is written, as I live with the Lord, to me every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess to God." This does not mean that God is a stern autocrat who by reason of supreme power compels man to bow to him. It is rather an expression of the order of divine law, the law of all love, all good. Man meaning every person, who is at first living in the selfish animal part of himself will grow up through various stages and by various processes to the divine or spiritual understanding, wherein he knows that he is one with the Father and wherein he is free from all suffering because he has conscious dominion over all things. She states, each man must sooner or later learn to stand alone with his God. Nothing else avails. Nothing else will ever make you master of your own destiny. There is in your own indwelling Lord all the life, all the health, all the strength and peace and joy, all the wisdom and support that you can ever need or desire. All joy and strength and good spring up from a fountain within one's own being. Nothing that anyone does or says or fails to do or say can take away our joy and our good. Dr. Katie writes, it is through Christ, the indwelling Christ, that we are to receive all that God has and is, as much or as little as we can or dare to claim. She writes, we have come to a place now where our search for truth must no longer be for rewards. It must no longer be for seeking a creed to follow, but it must be for our living a life. She states, there is but one way to obtain this full realization of the Christ. I am the way, the truth, and the life, spoke the Christ through the lips of Jesus. You're holding to the words, Christ is the way, when you are perplexed and confused and can see no way of escape, will invariably open a way of complete deliverance. And that's all chapter 1. And then Dr. Katie moves into the second chapter, which is statement of being. It is who and what God is and who and what man is. And she writes, God then is not, as many of us have been taught to believe, a big personage or man residing somewhere in a beautiful region in the sky called heaven, where good people go when they die and see him clothed in ineffable glory. Nor is he a stern, angry judge, only awaiting opportunity somewhere to punish bad people who have failed to live a perfect life. God is spirit, or the creative energy that is the cause of all visible things. God as spirit is the invisible life and intelligence underlying all physical things. God is that invisible, intangible, but very real, something we call life. God is perfect love and infinite power. God is the total of these, the total of all good, whether manifested or unexpressed. There is but one God in the universe, but one source of all the different forms of life or intelligence that we see God is spirit. We cannot see spirit with these fleshy eyes, but when we clothe ourselves with the spiritual body, then spirit is visible or manifest, and we recognize it. God is love. We cannot see love nor grasp any comprehension of what love is, except as love is clothed with a form. All the love in the universe is God. God is wisdom and intelligence. All the wisdom and intelligence that we see in the universe is God, is wisdom projected through a visible form, waiting to be led forth into manifestation. Heretofore, we have sought knowledge and help from outside sources, not knowing that the source of all knowledge, the very spirit of truth, is lying latent within each one of us, waiting to be called on to teach us the truth about all things. God is power. God is not simply omnipotent, meaning all powerful. God is omnipotence, all power. God is not alone omniscient, meaning all knowing. God is omniscience, all knowledge. God is not only omnipresent, but more, is omnipresence. God is not a being having qualities, but God is the good itself. Everything you can think of that is good, when in its absolute perfection, goes to make up that invisible being we call God. God is substance, meaning standing under every visible form of life, love, intelligence, or power. So what is man? Man is the last and highest manifestation of divine energy, the fullest and most complete expression of God. To man, therefore, meaning to human beings, every person, is given dominion over all other manifestations. Man is a threefold being made up of spirit, soul, and body. Spirit, our innermost real being, the absolute part of us, the I of us, has never changed. Though our thoughts and our circumstances may have changed hundreds of times, this part of us is a standing forth of God into visibility. Mortal mind, that which Paul calls the mind of the flesh, is the consciousness of error. The greatest whole as of yet manifested good, or God, from whom we are projections or offspring in whom we live and move and have our being continually, is to me the Father. And all ye are brethren, it states in Matthew 23, because all are manifestations of one and the same Spirit. Jesus, recognizing this, said, "No man, your Father upon the earth. Call no man your Father upon the earth, for one is your Father, even he who is in heaven. Of course, meaning in the divine realm. God is the name we give to that unchangeable, inexorable principle at the source of all existence. Hitherto, we have turned our heart and efforts toward the external for fulfillment of our desires and for satisfaction, and we have been grievously disappointed. The hunger of everyone for satisfaction is only the cry of the homesick child for its father, mother, God. It is only the Spirit's desire in us to come forth into our consciousness as more and more perfection until we shall have become fully conscious of our oneness with all perfection. There is but one source of being. This source is the living fountain of all good, be it life, love, wisdom, and power, the giver of all good gifts. This source and you are connected every moment of your existence. You have power to draw on this source for all the good you are or ever will be capable of desiring. Humans are threefold beings made up of spirit, soul, and body. Spirit is the God within us. Soul is our thoughts, feelings, memory, attitudes, perceptions. It is our awareness, our consciousness. It is all that is between the grossly physical and the purely spiritual of us. Body is of humankind, the outpicturing of the soul in its present state of unfoldment, the outer expression of consciousness. We all have access through God in us, the central I of our being, to the great whole of life, love, wisdom, and power, which is God. We want now to know how to receive more of God and to make more and more of God manifest in our daily life. There is but one source of being. This is the living fountain of all good. This source and you are connected every moment of your existence, and you have the power to draw on this source for all of the good you now or ever will be capable of desiring. God bless you. We'll look forward to chapter 3 and the rest of Lessons in Truth in the times to come.